All right, let us say hello to Dean Thomas, doing multiple things here. He's driving and doing an interview at the same time. Just a true man, a true mensch, if you will. One of the best minds in the sport of mixed martial arts. He was watching UFC Vegas 32 this past Saturday night, so I wanted to get his thoughts on the festivities. Dean, thank you for doing this, man. How are you?
Man, I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great.
I'm just multitasking, man. I try to get as much done in a day as I possibly can. But don't worry, I'm not going to be on the road all that dangerous like this. I'm parking right now. So what's up, man?
Not too much, man. You know, it's great to have you here. First off, the event on Saturday had a lot of great fights, some great finishes, some questionable judging, which we'll get into in a moment. But a lot of people feel, Dean, that top to bottom, this was one of the better fight night events the UFC has ever put on. So I wanted to ask you first off, do you feel that way as well? Were you entertained to the max on Saturday?
Well, I was entertained to the max, sure. But it's hard to really say it was one of the better events. Because, I mean, sometimes those events are just really good. You know what I'm saying? So, so I wouldn't go that far. Some, recency bias. I mean, it was just the other day. So, of course, we're going to be like, yeah, it was the best event ever. But it was a good event. But I wouldn't go as far as to say it was the best event ever for a fight night.
Yeah, I mean, just recency bias is a huge thing in this sport, so I get what you're saying. But let's start with the main event because TJ Dillashaw returns to action for the first time in over 2 years, post suspension, takes on Cory Sandhagen in a fight that probably exceeded the already ridiculously high expectations that it had heading into it. So in the end, Dillashaw gets the split decision nod. Before we get into the X's and O's of the fight, how did you score? Did the judges get it right? Or did you feel that Sandhagen did enough to win?
I felt like Sandhagen did enough to win, but TJ, he had his moments. You know what I'm saying? Like he controlled the fight. Like he kind of won the game of the fight. I don't necessarily like that because it makes the sport a little like playing a game. But the thing is, at the end of the day, like fighting should be about finishing and doing damage. And, I don't think TJ did enough damage or did enough to get close to finishing to have won that fight. I still think that Cory won that fight, but TJ kind of won the game of the fight. So,
what do you mean by that specifically? Like winning the game of the fight?
When you talk about like scoring points and doing enough to like in the eyes of the judges say that I'm in control. He had his back for quite a bit, from the standing position. And I guess he's winning from there, like he's in a more offensive position, I guess. But he wasn't really doing anything. So, like, it's not, to me, that's not really winning a fight to hold that position. But when everything else is even, and it wasn't really even, but for the amount of time that he had that position, you got to give him some credit for that because Cory didn't want to be there. So TJ was holding him in a position where he didn't want to be. Even though he's not doing nothing, he's holding him in a position where he didn't want to be. So I guess you kind of say he's winning that portion of the fight.
These are definitely two of the very best fighters and arguably the best division in the sport right now. I mean, the fight was just plain ridiculous. So what, I guess, stood out to you the most? Like, what were your biggest takeaways from those 25 minutes?
My biggest takeaways is that Cory is the better fighter. Cory's the better fighter. I think more than TJ winning the fight, Cory kind of lost that fight for himself. I think he gambled on the fact that he was going to knock TJ out, so he made some mistakes in terms of some of his decisions and what he was doing in the fight, some of the spinning attacks, and just not keeping it simple and defending a takedown in a simple approach. I think if he had fought that fight again and said, you know what, I'm going to fight this fight with a slightly more simple approach and just get my shots off, I think he beats TJ. But in the moment, I think he thought he was going to knock him out. And TJ capitalized off of that and said, all right, you're going to try to spin and stuff? I'm going to get you down and take your back and hold you and control the clock for this amount of time. But at the end of the day, I still think Cory is a better fighter than TJ. But with that said, my second takeaway is that TJ is still a damn good fighter. He's still a damn good fighter. And I still think he beats a good portion of the bantamweights. I just don't think he's as good as Cory Sandhagen.
Dillashaw gets the win. He wants the title shot. He wants the winner of Sterling versus Jan 2, which is apparently been agreed upon for October 30th. There's certainly an argument, excuse me, to be had for that because he never technically lost the title in the cage. Of course, he's dealing with a nasty cut near his eye. His knee looked to have been a little banged up in the fight. So if timing works out and all is okay on the injury front, do you think that Dillashaw should get the winner of that fight and fight for the belt next? Or do you personally need to see more from him before you're ready to make that decision and throw him into another title fight?
No, I don't need to see more from him. I think that he's, going out there, and regardless of me thinking that Cory Sandhagen's a better fighter, TJ's still a damn good fighter. He's still, in the eyes of the judges, won that fight and has still kept it close. I think that he's deserving of a title shot if, with the winner of Aljamain Sterling and Peter Yan. Yeah, I think that TJ deserves that shot.
Sandhagen, like you said, he's just so damn good, man. And most people felt that he won the fight. And I don't think it was a robbery per se. And his future is still super bright. There's a lot of really fun matchups for him. But I guess like one of the things I was thinking about the last couple of days is where does Rob Font now fit into this equation? Because he's right there in the mix for a title shot. I feel like timing is his worst enemy right now. But how does Rob sort of factor into this thing? Because if TJ gets a title shot, it seems pretty obvious you just do Sandhagen versus Font next, right?
It seems obvious like that, but you know what? Maybe you do. Maybe you do. It kind of makes sense. This is why it's my favorite division. The bantamweights are my favorite division. These guys are so good. They're so neck and neck, and it's going to take a little bit of time for them to clean itself out. I mean, it reminds me of 2 years ago, the welterweight division, where it was just like so many good guys. And that's where the bantamweights are right now. But yeah, I guess Font and Sandhagen make sense. I don't know if Font wants that fight. You know what I'm saying? I think that's a tough out for Font. But Font's a tough dude. So he's down to fight anybody. From that Boston cartel, man, them guys, they don't care about nothing. They'll fight you in the street.
I agree with you 100%. So that was the main event. That had some controversy with the decision. Certainly wasn't egregious compared to other things that happened on this main card. Most notably, the co-main event, which was also a bantamweight fight. And then, of course, the Macey Barber versus Miranda Maverick fight, which we'll get into in a moment. But let's start with Raulian Paiva versus Kyler Phillips, because Paiva gets the decision win. Pretty much everybody thought this should have been a draw because of what Phillips did in that first round. It should have been a 10-8 first round for sure for Phillips. And you can even make an argument, a slight one, since it's so rare, maybe even a 10-7 round. I mean, this is one-way traffic the whole way. 10-8's how I had it. I mean, Dean, if Paiva was getting 10-9s for winning his round, but Phillips got a 10-9 for that first round, how the hell is that even possible, man? Like, how is this possible?
Yeah, and that's something that we need to discuss. But the reality of it is because the fighters are suffering from this and the commission is not suffering from it, the commission's not losing money by screwing fighters. The UFC is not losing money by screwing fighters. The fighters are the ones who are really suffering from this, from bad judging and bad decisions made by the powers that be. So because of that, until the UFC's pockets are affected by it, or the commission more so is affected by it, we're not going to see a change, because only the fighters are suffering. And they're just like, hey, you know what? Who cares? Because you can look at those decisions. You can't take that up with the commission. You try to go to the commission with that, they're going to rip it up and be like, see ya. The decision is the decision. Is the decision. And that's what they're going to tell you. But if it affected their pocket, like if they got penalized for making bad decisions like that, we'd see a change in the scoring system and in the judging. But you're right. There is absolutely no way you could say this is a 10-9 and this is a 10 and this is 10-9 as well, based on the effects of those rounds. I mean, it's ridiculous. And, my man got screwed from it. He's got to wear that L on his record because of that.
Yeah, it should have been a draw. Like it sucks having a draw, but it's better than a loss. And right. It's crazy for Kyler Phillips. He's supposed to fight Rafael Assunção and get a top 10 guy. Now he's taking a short notice fight with Raulian Paiva and loses a fight that should have been a draw. It's just nuts. It's just crazy how these 10-9s are being compared the same. It's just absolutely asinine. But I want to get your thoughts on the fight that everybody's talking about in terms of the judging. Macey Barber gets the split decision win over Miranda Maverick. She snaps the 2 fights again. And look, first off, I had zero issue with the matchmaking here. I know a lot of people did, but in terms of the fight itself and the result, no disrespect to Macey, Dean, because she has a bright future in the sport for sure. But outside of Macey herself, I didn't see one person, whether it be media, fighter, coach, fan, etc. Not one person did I see score that fight for Macey Barber. I assume you are not number 2 on that list. What did you think of the fight, the scoring of the fight? Are you comfortable throwing out the word robbery in this case?
Yeah, I am. And the reason being is because I see how hard fighters work in order to do their job and be good at their job. Fighters work damn hard to be good at their job. And when you have something like this happen and it's not in their control, they can't do anything about it. That's a robbery. That's an absolute robbery. It's like working hard to go to the bank, working hard, getting paid, getting a check, then you go to the bank to deposit it, and somebody steals it. That's what happened to her. She worked for months for this fight. She did what she needed to do in order to win, and somebody took that away from her. That's a robbery. Not only just from a W&L standpoint, but from a financial standpoint, because these fighters in their contracts, they typically get paid double to win. And the fact that these judges got that wrong, that's a robbery. She absolutely got robbed in that fight. She fought a hell of a fight, and it's a shame of what's happening. That she had to take that L. I think we need to start a GoFundMe to give her money, but nah, but it's an absolute robbery for them to do that to a fighter, to get that wrong.
Do you think in 2021 at this point, with the UFC and the sport being so well established at this point, is the win show payout structure, are we beyond this? Like, is this too old school for us? Like, I feel like we wouldn't be harping on it this much. I mean, the judges, sure, that they have their share of the responsibility in this. They have pretty much all the responsibility in this. But at the same time, if we just improve that payout structure and it's just one flat fee for everybody, you know what you're getting paid, so forth and so on, maybe you can get some bonuses and all of those things. I feel like we wouldn't be as upset about this as maybe we would have been, with the old, comparing the structures. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this is something I've been screaming for years. You can go back and check my MySpace page. I've been screaming this for years. They need to get rid of the show and win bonus, because the win bonus does not help you perform better. It doesn't. In fact, it makes you a boring fighter because you're going to do what you have to do in order to win. That's really what it does. I think they need to have one flat fee, then you get bonuses for finishing, not for winning, but for finishing. I think the whole pay structure comes down to like a tournament style. I think that's really like the principle of the way we structure the pay is, I think, based on tournaments. Like if you advance in a tournament, you get more money. I think that's what it came down to. It's like, okay, you advance in a tournament, you get more money. You win the tournament, you get more money. But when you're talking about one single fight, you don't need to incentivize a fighter with double the money, because that's not going to help them. It doesn't really help them. It absolutely doesn't help. Fighters want to win regardless, and that doesn't help them. But I think it hurts them in terms of excitement, because they're going to do what they have to do in order to win and not be exciting and go for a finish.
Everyone keeps saying we need to fix the judging, and you had a great idea about demonetizing bad decisions and bad judging, and in a good amount of cases, there's so much truth to that. But the big question is, like, in terms of like the in-fight action and how we actually score these things, like how do we do it? Like, it's hard. A lot of people say like, oh, you got to get the right people in there, like the knowledge, maybe get some fighters in there. And it's really hard to do because there's not a lot of individuals who, as kids, when they write reports on what they want to be when they grow up, they say, you know what? I want to be an MMA judge. I bet there's tons of money in that. Like, who the hell wants that responsibility? Like, no one's writing articles about a judge who scores a fight correctly. Wow. Great scorecard, Sal D'Amato. It's all about the negative. Like, how in the world can we even fix this, Dean? Like, is it the actual 10-point must system? Is it just putting noise blocking headphones on? Like, what can be done to improve the judging process within a fight as we know it?
Well, I think the problem is really within the 10-point must system. which I don't necessarily have a problem with if you're more willing to give 10-8s and 10-7s because of the way a round is viewed. But when you look at that Kyler Phillips fight, it's like that's definitely a 10-8, could even be a 10-7, and you got to use that and not just be like, oh, he won a round, so give him a 10-9. Oh, you know what? We can give a 10-8. Oh, I forgot about that. Because I think that's what happens sometimes. They forget that they can get a 10-7 because there's no way you can look at both of those rounds and say that they were the same. But I think that one thing we have to do, the judges have to do is to really quantify what's important in a fight. Like how do you view leg kicks compared to jabs? How important are takedowns really? I don't really even how important is our takedowns really? Well, I mean, what have you done by putting a guy on his back? How close did you get to finishing? You didn't really. So if I hit you and I knock you down, or if you take me down, how do you score that? We got to really quantify what's important in a fight. And I think that's what it comes down to is that we all don't view it the same way. Like if I'm getting kicked in my leg, fighters, when they're getting kicked in the leg, sometimes they don't even realize it. But yet the judges are like, oh, he's getting kicked in the leg. And fighters are not making adjustments because they're not realizing it because they don't realize that they're losing points on this. In fact, I was talking to Pani Kianzad about her fight with she just had a fight in Vegas a few weeks ago, and the name will come to me in a second. And she was getting kicked in the leg, and I was asking her, I was like, why didn't you make the adjustment? She said, I didn't even realize I was getting kicked. In the moment, I didn't realize I was getting kicked. So this is what I'm saying. So they're not really recognizing, but she's losing points because of it, but she's not even realizing. So I think that we need to really establish what weighs in a fight, and fighters need to understand that going into a fight so that they can make the proper adjustments, and then we can score these fights properly.
I mean, if you're Macey Barber, you're going full heel with this, right? Like, shut up, you know nothing. I actually 1080'd her in all 3 rounds. There is no controversy. Jessica, where you at? That's exactly what she should be doing, right?
No, I think she should shut up and just be like, you know what? It was a close fight. I didn't make myself the winner. The judges saw me as a winner. I'm sorry that it worked out that way. That's all she can say is, hey, listen, it's not my fault the judges saw me as the winner. I went out and fought my fight, and they said I was the winner. I'm going home and taking my check.
Fair enough. In terms of the rest of the action, who is your MVP of the card that we haven't talked about yet? Who impressed you the most on Saturday?
Oh, wow. I got to think back. Honestly, this is going to sound really weird, but Miranda Maverick. Yeah, Miranda Maverick. I mean, I thought she fought, honestly, because I know how good Macey is. And, I know how good Macey is, and I know how athletic she is, and, how devastating of a fighter she could be. For Miranda Maverick to bully her around the way she did for those first 2 rounds, I was like, Miranda's really good. She's a really good fighter. She didn't make a lot of mistakes in that fight. I thought she did what she needed to do. I mean, obviously, Macey came back in that third, but Macey's a good fighter. I don't want to take that away from her. So you're talking about 2 really good fighters. If I had to give an MVP in that fight, I would say, on that entire card, Miranda Maverick was my MVP of that entire card.
I dig it, man.
She lost. That's it. That's what I mean. She lost, and she's my MVP.
So the stock still rose despite not getting the second half of the paycheck. So there you go. This coming, tons of MMA this weekend. The UFC's back, of course. They're going head to head with Bellator in that massive main event between Patricio Pitbull and AJ McKee. A lot of people are calling Pitbull and McKee the biggest fight in Bellator history. Do you agree with that? Do you feel like this is the biggest fight in Bellator history? I feel like there's a lot of other fights that aren't even being discussed.
Well, in terms of popularity, it's not even close. There's been a lot of big fights in Bellator history. I mean, in terms of popularity, you could talk about Chandler Alvarez, so those fights are just, they've been massive. But I think in terms of from a sport perspective, this is a pretty big fight. It's just, they're not very popular, not a lot of people know them, but from a sport perspective, AJ McKee has been groomed for this moment. I know his father well. He's been groomed for this moment. He's undefeated and he's a savage. And Pitbull is a savage in his own right. Like, I've studied him. He's a guy who barely makes mistakes. He's able to make adjustments in fights. He's a really good fighter. He's adapted to situations of fights. I mean, from a sport perspective, this is a phenomenal fight. And I got to give, Bellator credit for being able to make this happen, because, like, I think this is what they wanted. Like when you talk about the two top fighters at 145 outside of the UFC, that's them. I mean, they could go into, either of these guys could go into UFC and give a run to anybody at 145. So they're really good fighters, and this is a big fight. But from a public standpoint, I don't think it's the biggest fight in Bellator history.
You got a pick for that fight?
I don't have a pick for that fight. I mean, I don't. It's so hard to say. But I guess if I absolutely had to pick, I would say Pitbull. Just his experience of being able to make adjustments in fights, and we've rarely seen AJ McKee like in trouble, so we don't know how he's going to respond to being in trouble. I mean, he just shuts everybody out. Like, he's that good. He shuts everybody out. But every fighter, their card gets pulled where they have to really step up. This is going to be his time, so we're going to see how he does when he has to step up.
I love that fight. Two last quick things. The Dana White F It Friday parody video you put out was phenomenal, dude. It was so funny. What inspired you to put that together? Because it was gold, man.
I'm a creative, man. I like to just do creative things. And when I saw Dana do that video in the morning, I said, "Oh, I'm gonna get him." And like I had to go to work. I do a radio show, and I was like, I can't wait till the show's over because I got to go home and do this video. And like I had just been waiting to do that all day to get him. But I was thinking it. I was like, man, I hope Dana don't get pissed off because he's gonna fire me. But apparently he liked it, I suppose. But even if he didn't, I tagged everybody in the company so that everybody could see it. But I don't know, man. I saw it, and nobody really goes at Dana like that, so I had to go at him.
It was good. So he never responded and said anything to you about it?
No, he posted on it and just gave me the finger. So, but I mean, I was actually waiting for a phone call from him, be like, "Yo, take it down," and it never came. So I was like, "All right, it's cool."
Last thing, Brendan Allen got a big win over Puna Soriano. Great performance from him. The guy just keeps getting better and better. Why does he owe you $3?
He actually doesn't owe me $3. He's a good buddy of mine.
Okay.
So he's a good buddy. I like Brendan Allen. I've known him for a long time. He's a Louisiana boy. He used to train with a good buddy of mine, Rich Clementi, and Brand. We hung out in Milwaukee, and now he's down here in South Florida. So I see him all the time. I like to give him a hard time. Hell of a fighter, got a bright future ahead of him. So I got to give him a hard time.
No one really understands like how young he is, because he looks like he's 38 years old, but he's like, what's he, 25, 26? Not even
something like that. He's a kid, man. He's a young kid, but he's got a lot of potential. A lot of potential.
I agree. Dean, you are the man. I will let you go off to whatever you got to be doing in the vehicle, but it's crazy. Hey, you have 90 minutes ago to jump on and do this. You did not disappoint. I appreciate it very much, sir. And when are you back on the broadcast?
I'm on this weekend. So y'all can see me this weekend. I'll be doing the pre-show and the post-show this weekend. Strickland and Hall. That's going to be fireworks. And I can't wait to do that.
Hell yeah, man. We'll look forward to seeing you on the broadcast. Thanks again, man. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Take it easy.